The decline of Stewart-Haas racing has been a topic of high interest among many NASCAR fans. How did a championship-winning organization that used to win double-digit number of races in a year go winless in 2023? And while I'm sure there are many factors behind it, such as Ford, personnel changes, and more, Tony Stewart himself and his presence in the organization, or lack thereof, has been one of the biggest talking points. But Tony Stewart's recent issues extend far past just his race team. In fact, he's been beefing with NASCAR for the better part of the last 3 years. So let's take an in-depth look at some of the reasons why Tony Stewart might just be done with NASCAR. The beginning of the decline likely started at the end of 2020. Tony Stewart's star driver Kevin Harvick was absolutely dominating the competition with a 9-win season and looked to be well on his way to his second championship, and the third for Stewart-Haas as a whole. But after a catastrophic round of 8, Harvick would surprisingly not even make it to the championship race at Phoenix. What was most insulting about this was that the bulk of the damage to Harvick's monumental points cushion was done at Texas when he slammed the wall leading the race due to NASCAR starting the race in hazardous weather conditions. Not the only time that's happened over the past few seasons either. Now, Tony Stewart is an old school driver, and while he's never explicitly come out with any gripes against the current playoff format, probably because he likes keeping his money, can't say I blame him. If I had to guess, between NASCAR's point system screwing over his best driver and NASCAR themselves screwing Harvick by starting the race in the mist, this probably made Tony Stewart pretty heated. Only a few months later, Tony Stewart will reveal more details about his upcoming superstar racing experience, more commonly referred to as SRX. In the initial reveal, Stewart promised a series built for quote-unquote real racing with no gimmicks. Perhaps as a not-so-subtle jab at NASCAR's playoff system that had cost Kevin Harvick not long before. Of course, this didn't stop SRX from adding fun flags into the mix, but that's besides the point. Many point toward SRX being the thing that really soured the relationship between NASCAR and Tony Stewart, as NASCAR didn't appreciate having to deal with a big-time rival stock car series for the first time in over a decade. But honestly, while I'm not sure if this was the main catalyst, 2021 is definitely the year when things went from bad to worse. Only 3 days after SRX's formal reveal, Stewart revealed that NASCAR had not chosen to remove Stewart's dirt track of Eldora from the Truck Series schedule. Rather, he made that decision himself, after being unsatisfied with NASCAR taking the Cup Series to race on dirt at Bristol instead. He simply said, "Yeah, I was frustrated that Bristol got a dirt cup race after we have been doing it for 7 years now and showing that we can do it right. It is what it is." So from Tony's perspective, 7 years of trust that he had built up with NASCAR about racing on dirt for the Truck Series was never going to amount to anything, as SMI was able to get their dirt race approved without so much as a second thought. I can certainly understand being miffed at that. Apparently, NASCAR hadn't even told them that they were considering a dirt race for the Cup Series until 2 days before Bristol Dirt was formally announced. Allegedly, once he did find out, he told his staff to tear up the sanction agreement for the truck race immediately. But Tony Stewart's horrible, no good, very bad January didn't end there, as apparently he had actually attempted to reach out to NASCAR to see about running in the 2021 Clash. Remember, this was the year that the Clash was actually held at the Daytona road course, and Tony Stewart, being a very accomplished road racer, wanted one last shot at a realistic Cup Series win. But according to Stewart, NASCAR completely ghosted him. They didn't even tell him, "Sorry bro, you're not a full-time Cup driver, it's against the rules, we can't let you run." They just straight up didn't respond to a Hall of Famer. If I'm Tony Stewart at this point, yeah, my blood is boiling too. But getting back to the racetrack for a moment, 2021 will prove to be Stewart-Haas's worst year ever, at least at that point in time. The organization's only win would be scored by Eric Almirola of all people. Not even first ballot Hall of Famer Kevin Harvick would muster a win in SHR's less than competitive equipment that season. According to Rodney Childers, crew chief for the 4-car, NASCAR had adjusted their inspection process in 2021 to take away an advantage in the wheel well area that the team had hit on in the previous year. And to be honest, this is a much more logical explanation for the team's sudden fall-off than Tony Stewart just doesn't care anymore and wants his team to lose. But maybe the most insulting part of 2021 was Stewart being forced to watch as the one that got away tore up the track. Of course, I'm talking about Kyle Larson, a dirt racer that Tony Stewart had lobbied for many years. When asked about why Stewart didn't sign Larson when he was a free agent, Stewart said, "Trust me, I tried. I tried for the last 4 years. Ford wouldn't approve it. I tried." This of course raises the question, has Ford been picking Tony Stewart's drivers more than Tony Stewart's been picking Tony Stewart's drivers? It sure seems that way. I mean, Tony Stewart seems like he's always been fond of his fellow Indiana driver Chase Briscoe, but Briscoe's been in Ford's development pipeline as long as any of us can remember. So would he even have been Tony's first choice if not? We already know that Tony Stewart had to fight tooth and nail to get Ryan Preece in the 41 car this season after Cole Custer failed to perform for many seasons. It just seems like for a guy whose name is on the building, he has surprisingly little authority. And Kyle Larson isn't the only prospect that Stewart lost out on in the last few years. Apparently, he was also interested in signing Kyle Busch last year. Even Kevin Harvick said that he thought the team should have been far more aggressive in pursuing him. But I guess that sweet, sweet Smithfield money went out in the end. So whether it's because of Gene Haas, Cole Custer's dad, or Ford, Tony just isn't picking up the drivers he wants the most. There were some pretty hefty rumors circulating last year that Tony was looking to switch to Dodge to help them get back into NASCAR. Possibly because his wife Leia Pruitt has connections with Mopar, but I feel like Tony getting the short end of the stick with these development drivers may be another big reason why Tony wants out of Ford. But things would finally come to a boiling point in late 2022, when Cole Custer and Stewart-Haas Racing were penalized for race manipulation following the Charlotte Roval race. Which they were definitely guilty of. But this set Tony Stewart off into a frenzy. After nearly 2 full years of disrespect from NASCAR, he aired all of his grievances out. The next week when NASCAR went to Las Vegas, Stewart said, "Super glad I'm going drag racing this weekend. If it weren't for the fact that I've got a couple of appearances that I have to make, I wouldn't be at another NASCAR race for the rest of the year. Wouldn't waste my time." One of those aforementioned appearances was scheduled for the following race at Homestead, where Stewart was slated to be the Grand Marshal of the race. At first, many wondered if NASCAR just didn't want to place a mic in an angry Tony Stewart's hands, afraid of what demonic rage he may bring down in front of a TV audience of millions. But apparently Stewart voluntarily stepped down to engage with some of his partners from Stewart-Haas Racing. Yeah, sure, and I'm Jimmy Johnson. And things have only gotten worse since then. In fact, as of making this video, Stewart-Haas Racing is the most penalized team in the next-gen era. Kevin Harvick was docked 100 points and had his crew chief suspended for 4 races after modifications made at Talladega in 2022. Cole Custer was fined $100K for the aforementioned race manipulation penalty. Chase Briscoe had his entire 2023 season nuked by a penalty at Charlotte for a counterfeit part, costing the team $250,000 and 120 points. And Kevin Harvick was disqualified once again at Talladega for an issue with the windshield fasteners. These aren't merely 4 small penalties either. These are the 4 biggest penalties of the last 2 years. Tony Stewart has neglected to comment on any of the team's more recent penalties. In fact, this weekend at Phoenix for Cole Custer's championship may have been the first time I've seen him at the track in months. Man just seems to be invested in drag racing and drag racing only right now. So, to recap, he started his own stock car series, got married and started drag racing, got ghosted by NASCAR for an exhibition race of all things, NASCAR passed on Eldora for a cup race and didn't tell him about it, Ford doesn't let Tony pick most of his drivers, he's losing his 2 biggest cash cow sponsors at the end of the season, Kevin Harvick is retiring, and he's paid more fines in the next-gen era than anybody. That's a laundry list long enough to drive any person insane. So, what do you think? Do you think Tony Stewart has just thrown in the towel, or are the things happening to his race team far outside of his control? Let me know in the comments down below, but don't forget to leave a like in this video, subscribe for more videos just like this one, and check out dailydownforce.com for more awesome NASCAR content.